Greetings, I'm Drew McGinley, and today I'm going to be looking at why wildlife management. And you'll see why I'm taking these classes in the environmental policy master's degree. So, this is a little bit about me. I'm from a town called Port Angeles, Washington, and I also lived in Forks, Washington. And I'm a chaplain in the Army. I'm an Anglican priest, and I've specialized in clinical chaplaincy and bioethics. And I'm getting close to my retirement from the military. You can see here some pictures of me with my family and with soldiers, and you can see an aerial view of where I call home. I grew up with the national park in my backyard, and I've just done a lot of conservation work in that area, and I'll talk more about that later. So, why wildlife management? I believe it's a calling because of my faith. I know a lot of people don't talk about their faith outside of like maybe church circles, but since I was asked why, I think it would be disingenuous if I didn't address it because it really is the underlying driving factor in why I do wildlife management and do conservation stuff. There's a verse that says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." So, as a Christian, I see that creation or the world, everything around it, it belongs to God. There's another verse here that says, "Yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power, the glory and the majesty and the splendor. For everything in heaven and earth is yours." Part of my underlying drive is the recognition that all of earth and everything in it belongs to God. And there's a verse that goes along with this point in the Genesis account of God's creation of humanity. It says that he put humanity in the garden to care for it and to tend to it. So, in a way, that humanity's first job is to be a conservationist of sorts, a wildlife management of sorts. That job it was given to us by God from the very beginning. With that underlying understanding that all of creation belongs to God, I also recognize that creation is both a gift to humanity, but it's also a task. So the key point in here is that creation belongs to God, that we have a moral obligation to treat it as such. Richard Bachman, he explains that we need the humility to know ourselves as creatures within creation, not gods over creation. The humility of knowing only God is God. The other key point is that humanity is invited by God to be co laborers with him in the care of his creation. And the rejection of this invitation is to reject one of God's greatest gifts to humanity. Pope Benedict says that the environment is God's gift to everyone, and in our use of it, we have a responsibility towards future generations and towards humanity as a whole. So, how does this fit into my life? How have I implemented this? Well, when I left the active duty Army and went to the National Guard, I got hired by the Department of Ecology in Washington State as an ecological assistant. And I took a year working on the Elwha Dam removal and river restoration project. And here you can see some of the dam removal. It came about through legislation, the Elwha River Ecosystem and Fisheries Restoration Act. It took almost 10 years for it to actually begin, but it shows that the legislation can make a difference. Also, this is the largest dam removal project in the history of the world. They removed two dams from the Elwha River. The goal of the removal of the dams was to restore the river's ecosystem and also salmon recovery. They used an adaptive management framework for the removal and the restoration aspects. Both dams were removed in 2011 and 12. This is where I come in. After the dams were removed, I participated in the restoration part of this project. These were all organizations that were involved in this, and I worked with various people depending on the day. Also, like some of the stuff I got to do was wildlife surveys, salmon surveys. We did river surveys, and there's other surveys that we did too. I also got to participate in a lot of restoration activities. We did invasive plant control, erosion control. We managed a nursery that grew native plants. My team planted probably over 250,000 plants in that 1 year period. And we did some trail maintenance because some of the river runs through the national park. The results of this project is we have seen adult fish numbers increase. We've expanded habitat use. There was a resurgence in naturally produced juvenile salmon and the reemergence of summer steelhead trout. After the dams were removed, we started seeing trout in the river again. The cultural healing aspect with the Lower Elwha tribe, the Elwha River runs right by the reservation. The river was an important part of their cultural identity. the US government, the state government, and them working together to bring healing to the river built a lot of trust within the community. So, why wildlife management? Ultimately, I believe it's a calling from God for every human. And when I retire from the Army, a lot of my free time is going to be spent doing conservation work because I feel like it's very life-giving and it's honoring God and it also honors our neighbors. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. And y'all have a good day. Bye.